Hello, everyone. Welcome to Beyond Life Paranormal Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Reynolds, and we got a good show tonight. We're doing a show on a Friday night because there won't be a show tomorrow night. We are at the Get Haunted event at Missouri State Penitentiary book signing tomorrow night, and we will be there with a bunch of friends. I know there's still some last minute tickets available, so get on extremeticketing.com and you can get your tickets. Come out, investigate with us and the Get Haunted crew. Um, so we got a good show tonight. We're going to be talking about several cryptids. We're going to be talking about the Rougarou, the Boggy Creek Monster, the Honey Island Swamp Monster, and the North American Sasquatch. And with me tonight, that's going to help me kick this thing off and guest host, Carter Bouchard, who's a Sasquatch researcher. He's also wrote several books, and I've got some of his evidence we're going to show tonight. So without further ado, we're going to bring him on with us and get this show started. Hey, Carter.
Hey, good
Welcome.
evening, sir. Thanks for
Welcome.
having me again.
Oh, you're welcome.
I didn't know I was going to have to pay you to be on here, so I've never been charged before. I'm just kidding, everybody.
Well, you're kind of like my co-host tonight too.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk. I got plenty of stuff. You have to just shoot at me to make me stop talking. I'm just a talker once I get going, but let the audience throw their questions at you or commentary, and
Yep.
let's do it.
And we're streaming on live on my personal Facebook page, my group Facebook page. We are also live on LinkedIn and YouTube.
All right.
So our first cryptid is the Rougarou, which I have some notes written down on the Rougarou. They're also known as the Loop, the Garu, which Loop meaning wolf and Garu meaning the man who turns into an animal. The shape-shifting monster that lives in the swamps of Louisiana. Rougarou is actually a mischief word for werewolf. It is like
Hmm.
a werewolf, but it can turn into a wolf form at any time. This is what makes the Rougarou much more dangerous. Cajun folklore says it stalks the swamps of Acadia and Greater New Orleans. It is often used by parents to get their children to behave.
I'm going to feed you to the doggy.
Catholics have their own version as well. They say that the Rougarou is a monster that will stalk and murder Catholics that do not obey the rules of Lent. Some people say that the curse or blessing for evil people only lasts for 101 days. The curse is then transferred to the last person bitten.
That's pretty complex
Yeah.
rules they got there. This is one that I've never seen. And here's something that I have to backtrack on. I've been doing this 15, 20 years, and a lot of things you see are at night.
Yep.
And if you don't have a thermal, you see these big giant humanoid shapes, and I always assumed that was Sasquatch. But now that 20 years later, after I got into this, I realize there are other beings possibly. And how many times have you seen? I have seen backlit human torsos, gigantic things. I just assumed they were Sasquatch because they're 20 yards away, 50 yards away. They're in the deep woods, there's moonlight back behind them. So you just go, oh, look, there's one over there. But now that, it is not only possible, but probable that there are dogmen and Galros and Mothman and all the other cryptids, there's not just 500,000 crazy people in the world
Right.
just seeing these things. There's a lot of people, and after a while, you just can't ditch it. You just have to go. There's something to it. Everybody's got really good gummies. They've got they've got good, beings that actually live in the woods near them, and they just, are now finding these things out. It's kind of fascinating. But it's kind of funny to me that many times I'd seen things in the woods, and I just assumed they were one being
Mhm.
because the others had not come to prominence yet, or hit mainstream. So you just go, well, yeah, I know I saw Sasquatch. There's 3 or 4 of them watching this. If we could see him in the woods, well, maybe it wasn't Sasquatch.
Right.
Doesn't have to be, because there are legitimate. You take reports from all walks of the paranormal,
Yep.
thing. I'm more into the cryptozoology part of it, but you know, uh, you take reports, and after a while, there's a thread of truth and a thread of commonality where these people aren't all just making this stuff up. They're not all just crazy or drunk or stoned or wanting some attention. you know, like with my witnesses and my books, none of them are you would not know who any of them were. There's no names. The
Right.
location is vague. I may have it in a neighboring state because who and where doesn't matter. It's what they're witnessing and what they're telling you. That's, and once I got that across to people in the books, my witnesses are very thankful of that. They don't want people driving by wanting to shoot a Sasquatch for the big prize,
Right.
get the body or get a dog man or a rougarou or anything. I'm going to make a name for myself. Well, people don't want that. So, there's a relative safety with uh, my reporting because it's intentionally vague as to where and who. But like I said, because none of that matters. So and it's really cool that people are coming forward with this, and you can look at it and see why there might be some ridicule. Oh, you saw a spaceman. Oh, you saw a gorilla. You saw a Sasquatch. You saw a dog man. Really? Wait till I tell the
Right.
boys at work. You know, you know. So, and with every witness that is in any of my books, and some that aren't in books because they still don't trust the system, you know, they would not have done it without a promise, that I was not going to. And so that's how you get to your information. If you can
Yep.
develop some trust and respect with folks that know you're not going to turn on them or do anything wrong or reveal them, they'll tell you all kinds of stuff. And it is just awesome, and it's flattering too to have people trust and call you with stuff. So, and I still go spend time with them, and hang out at the house for a couple of days and experience what they have and move on to another house. you know uh, I do find that the people, as I get further south, because I'm in Missouri, as I get toward the border of Arkansas, Louisiana, the Rougarous and the Dogman are kind of common knowledge when they weren't even 5 years ago. It's just, I don't know if it's well, combination of everything. More people seeing them, more people actually just reporting, not worrying about being discovered or found out who you are. And so somebody else will go, well, I told you I wasn't crazy, honey. I told you I saw it. Oh, okay, I believe you. So there is there's some goodness. It's this process. We're still going through it, with just with the Sasquatch and all the cryptids, of having it be acceptable and not only possible but probable that they do exist, and you can discuss it without embarrassing yourself. You know, so but
Right.
that's cool. I like that.
And they say that this Rougarou, the shapeshifter, can turn into a werewolf whenever it wants, and it is slightly more muscular and powerful, though because it has to cross the dense swamps. It looks a lot like a werewolf, but has some difference. Gauging Lure claims that the Rougarou possesses the body of a man, but the head of a dog, wolf or dog with glowing red eyes. If anyone manages to look into its red shining eyes or gets bitten by one, they would become a rougarou themselves in the manner very akin to a typical lycanthrope.
Lycanthropy or
Yep,
lycanthropy. Yeah, that's lichens, right?
yep. And then it said the sightings, cow mutilations have been reported with no blood left in the body. This aspect is very similar to the various chupacabra sightings. Some daring cryptozoologists have attempted to approach the rougarou, but all attempts have failed.
Well, I would probably not be one willing to approach it
I would
unless,
I don't think I would either.
you know, that one doesn't look like it has anything good planned for you. If he were to meet it, if you were to meet one like that, and that's the one thing with Sasquatch and other cryptids. Uh, I don't know if the people reporting them are actually seeing the snarling, growling, all this stuff. They see it and they're scared, and perhaps they're talking themselves into it being this snarling, growling beast. Uh, in my Sasquatch research, you know, none of my habituation folks describe anything like hate, fear, nothing. It's a mostly peaceful coexistence when they're actually living on their property
Mhm.
and at times interacting with them, and they're watching each other. The humans are watching the Sasquatch and the dog man, like I was talking about, the kid that had the dog man sighting, and they just watch because they have an understanding that the humans aren't going to do anything to them. They're not going to try to shoot them or kill them or anything like that, or you kill their babies. And so they just leave each other alone, and it's a study in studies. It's they're watching the humans, and we are watching them, learning about their life and their familial relationships and all the other things that go on. And it's something nobody really pays attention to or knows about. You know, habituation of any cryptid. Uh, and like I was talking about the dog man that visited my guy, he never he never experienced it, but there was no fear, no trying to attack you or to scare you or growl or run at you. They just looked at each other and it's like, okay, I'll leave you alone. You leave me alone, and
Right.
just went about their business. It's bizarre. So,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
here's some questions. Yeah, I seen Fat Man. Well, I wonder who that is. The Grunch Road Monster of Louisiana is supposed to be that region's version of El Chupacabra. Huh. I'd never heard so the Grunch Road is kind of like we have here in Missouri. There, where's it down there near Springfield? The Ghost Lights. Where's that?
Joplin.
Joplin. Yeah, the Ghost Lights.
The
So,
Joplin Light. Yep.
so it's the same thing. It's the Ghost Lights on a specific road, but they're not like all over the state. They're just in this one place where you can see them, and they appear, and then they're there. So Grunch Road, I figured that's another regional thing.
Yep.
That's cool. I never heard of it. Does anybody have any photos or drawings of that?
Uh, uh, Friends of mine, paranormal team, Cam Paranormal, they went down to Joplin down there and they filmed the actual Joplin spook light,
Did they?
and they have it on their YouTube page.
I'm going to look up Grunch Road Monster. Grunch Road Monster. There it is, New Orleans. Yeah, kind of a lizard. There's a pretty good drawing of the Grunch Road Monster. God, can you imagine seeing that stuff?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, God. Type Chupacabra unknown. Last sighting in 2007. United States habitat, remote bogs and swamps of New Orleans. Unknown. Population is unknown at this time. Huh. And that's the other thing about, all these regional things. Everybody has them, and then whether the rumor or the actual being itself doesn't cross into other county lines or it has its own territory. It
Mhm.
seems like other witnesses in other parts of Louisiana don't see them if they're from one part. Well, that's down there in the south part. We don't see those up here. We see this down here. We don't see those up there. So it's bizarre. Like that's news to me. That's the Grunch Road Monster. But there's a drawing of it and two drawings, and they're kind of similar.
Oh wow.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, our next one we're going to talk about is this guy right here, the Boggy Creek Monster.
Recognize that one.
And it was made into a movie in 2011, filmed and directed by Brian T. Janis. Was the remake of Charles B. Pierce's original 1972 film. However, it is unrelated story set in the fictional town of Boggy Creek, Texas. Even so, the film obviously draws influence from Pierce's film with its small town setting and the use of spooky swampscapes for the Southern Sasquatch horror slasher.
Hmm.
And it says it's a low budget film, is what it
Well,
says.
by Hollywood standards, it probably is. You know, it didn't. Even the original Boggy Creek, I thought had some pretty cool effects, cheesy as they may have been, but
Mm,
with the technology at the time, that's probably about as good as it was going to get for a low budget. If you had a Hollywood budget, if you had a couple of $1,000,000 to spend on special effects and all that, imagine what this might look like.
right.
But it gives it that flavor. It gives it the flair of the Southwest, the South, Arkansas, Louisiana. It gives you that flair. And uh, if it was too clean, if it was like the Godzilla and Mothra movies, it probably wouldn't have had the same effect because there's got to be something just kind of real and down home about it, where it's not all polished and everything. So, but that's
Yeah, they said the swamp stalker Boggy Creek is also known as the Folk monster, Fouke.
Falk.
Yeah, the Falk monster or Southern
Yeah,
Sasquatch.
yeah.
They say he's a brown humanoid that lives near Arkansas and bears a striking eerie resemblance to the Momo seen in Louisiana and Missouri.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd done some reading on the Momo. It seems like there was that one couple, young couple, teenage couple. I can't remember. They're out parking or somewhere, and they saw it and reported it. And there was only really a few sightings or reports after that, and they just kind of stopped. And it was the same report just being regurgitated, and people were calling it in hysterical. Somebody scared them when they're out parking in Lover's Lane or whatever they're doing. And, something came up to the car, somebody, they could have been spooking them or messing with them just because there was the rumor of Momo. So I was reading there weren't as much reports as there was regurgitation of information, is what they say about the Momo, you know. Uh, but it doesn't take much, this rendering here reminds me a lot of the skunk apes down in Florida.
Yep.
They're shorter, smaller in stature, and they're meaner. They're very hostile. And nothing I've experienced, but people have told me, Jeff Healy down there has got that skunk ape camp. He's got all that going on. He's the reigning expert of all that's down there. But those little skunk apes, they're hostile. They're mean and nasty. I guess I would be too if I was battling crocodiles and
Yep.
rattlesnakes in the swamp all day. You pesky little farts, get out of my way. Get out
Yep.
of here. So, but that's a cool drawing, and that's Americana at its finest. It's primitive. It's not really the greatest drawing, but it's cool. It tells you what you need. Original Boggy Creek, I thought was more.
Monster 70s, around the time the movie came out.
Yeah. Well, you may have just Grandizer. You may have just coined a new phrase,
Yeah,
the voyeur monster. I got called that once in high school, but they couldn't prove anything, so no, it went away. Just kidding, far as I know.
but they
Yeah,
say this Boggy Creek monster, he's aggressive just like the Momo and the skunk ape.
yeah.
Says it's very vicious and attacks humans. Many people have been terrified by the creature. Local legends of the ape-like creature date back to 1946 when it was called the Jonesville Monster, based on the town where it was initially sighted. Sighted again in the mid 60s, the creature didn't make local headlines until 1971 when it was said to have attacked the home of Bobby and Elizabeth Ford.
Hmm. I wonder if, well, no, that wouldn't really work. I'm just kind of wondering if, these drawings are accurate depictions or are they meant to instill fear because the
Mm,
person observing it was scared to death? Can't say I wouldn't probably wet myself a little bit too,
right,
if something popped up, out of nowhere. But you just kind of wonder if that fear is just because it's unknown and the unknown came to life, and otherwise in real life it probably would not hurt you because it's more scared of you than you are of it. You
right.
know, and that's the only thing I, about, with my Sasquatch research. I don't really care for it when everything is portrayed as this snarling beast with blood and saliva dripping down its jaw and just waiting
Yeah,
to,
the way Hollywood makes those movies of
yeah, waiting to eat your babies and your children and stuff. It's not real. I mean, I guess that's how you sell tickets. But now that I'm researching this, I appreciate my point of view more than theirs. If I was making films and stuff and I wanted to sell a bunch of tickets, I don't know if I could do it that way.
right,
Because I have too respect for the actuality of these beings. I've seen them and I know they exist, and I've spoken to people who've seen them more times than I have, and they're just like, I can't argue with any of that. I've experienced so much of being chased, growls, throw stuff thrown at you, people I know and respect, hearing and seeing things they just defy logic, and they know what it is. I don't care what you think. This is what I saw, and that kind of thing. And so portrayal like that is good, but that also kind of makes people afraid of them before they even see them or experience them. And people are weaponizing themselves.
mhm,
There's pro kill groups for cryptids. That. I mean, it's. I think they're falling by the wayside because nobody respects that logic. They do bury their dead. We will find a body. The government has them. They know where they're at. They, blah, blah, blah. They know all that. We're just not, we're just the little taxpayers. We don't deserve to know anything other than what bones they throw us.
right.
Kind of insulting, kind of frustrating. But we're paying our taxes and they can do what they want with our money. They can lie to us, which is what they do. You know,
Yeah,
you cannot not know that
right.
exists, and you cannot not have proof of it as a government entity. You know, with the ETs and everything, you know, they have all the knowledge. We have chunks of leftovers that they throw us. It's not fair. We're getting there. We're getting there. We're getting close.
Yep. Says
Much.
this southern Sasquatch is described as a giant human-like ape creature with long arms, long dark hair, 3 toes on each foot, bright red eyes the size of silver dollars. It's said to walk with a shuffling gait and run in a hunched or slouched posture while swinging its arms like a primate. Original reports from the 70s described the creature as 7 feet tall and up to 300 pounds and a chest about 3 feet wide. The creature's alleged footprints are said to measure 17 inches long and 7 inches wide.
Yeah, that's a 17 incher right behind me there. That second print, that's
Hmm.
actually a about a 19 inch. The guy that uh, cast it ran out of plaster of Paris. So I have a picture of the print with the toes in it, but he ran out of plaster, so there's no toes on it. You know, you know, and that's just a local. So
Yep.
17, 19, 24. I've seen a 24-inch track, uh, probably a Sasquatch up in Iowa. Yeah, we were leading an expedition up there, and we found some and cast them. Like actually, a guy from Canada had come down to go on this expedition in Iowa, and he was so excited, and he found the print. He was an old man, and he found it. He was just so excited. It was really cool, but it was a legit print. It was big. So when you think of them as, oh, aren't they cute? Like bison, people going to Yellowstone and
Yep.
stuff like that, doing stupid stuff. Aren't they so cute? No, well, they're not cute. They can rip you apart if they have to or want to. And that's the other thing I'm going about. How many people? I'm not talking, land beyond the lakes or any of these other places, any place, any confirmation of deaths by any of these cryptids. Does Carter have any stories heard about the Boggy Creek? No, I'm from Texas originally, but I moved up here before I started doing my research. I'm in Kansas City now, so we didn't have those there. I've got all my local stories from Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Oklahoma. Those are the 4 states I work, and I don't have any questions of those. I don't have any stories. Yep. Sasquatch throws rocks. They certainly do. And they're darn good shots. They can knock a drone out of the sky. And guys have had their drones nicked by rocks thrown from the ground. Well, what else can throw a rock 250, 300 feet into the air
Yeah.
and hit a drone, And so, there's a researcher buddy of mine that has that kind of stuff going on, where he had some slow-mo shots of a rock coming up at his drone. And you can't really see who threw it because it came from the woods, but you could see it coming up, and it's, they can take a drone out. So, and they can take a human out if they want. And that's the whole thing with all my research with habituation. None of my people that treat them well, like another intelligent person, have any trouble with them. They're there to study us. I say all the cryptids are there to study us. The Mothman, Dogman, Boggy Creek, Momo, Sasquatch. I mean, any if they wanted to do the things that we think they could do, they would do them, but they don't want to. They don't do it. Number one, they don't like the violence and all the stuff that we're causing wars. We have racism. We don't like anybody that looks different from us, talks different, ethnically different, so whatever. You know how it is. You don't have to go
Yep.
too far to explain that garbage. And so they don't like, and I'm speaking specifically of Sasquatch now because I know this to be true, but they do not like the way we are treating the planet. They don't like the way we treat each other. And so they're here to bring peace and harmony and for us to quit tearing up the planet. They're not, if they wanted to just come in here and rip us. No, I think, Carter, are you from the Texas region where the prehistoric dinosaurs? No, I think that is more south and east. I can't tell you exactly where it is. It's a riverbed uh, and it has dinosaurs and human footprints walking alongside each other. Do I believe the hide behind cryptid is just the Sasquatch? I'm not familiar with that term uh, or a different breed of Sasquatch. Uh, I know, or I believe to know, that there are probably 5 or 6 different sizes and I'll say breeds of Sasquatch. You've got the Pacific Northwest where they're allegedly reaching 12 to 15 feet in height because they don't have to deal with humans. And when they deal with humans coming up way into the British Columbia territory, Canadian territory, uh, just for lumber, they don't like that. And so they don't deal with humans very much or very well because they don't have to. They can be mean and violent, and you won't come anywhere near because I don't want you coming up here, destroying my habitat, taking our trees, killing our food, the whole thing. We don't want you coming. You don't need that. And so you read about and hear about stories like that, but as you get further down into where middle America, Washington State, Oregon, California, Ohio, you get into Sasquatch are dealing with humans far more often. And whether it takes a great amount of patience or very little at all to not want to rip our heads off because of the way we pollute the planet and pollute the food and everything they eat. So but as you get to, I say there's different temperaments as you get into areas where they are more used to dealing with this than maybe breeds. And I think the location that you're living in versus, let's say you're way up toward Greenland and the Canadian side and the British Columbia side, there's like no humans for hundreds of miles. There's nothing up there. Even the Native Americans, the indigenous people of Canada, they don't live up there as often as you'd think because there's too much, bear activity. There's too much, potential danger to living up that far away. So, but as you get further down, they're used to dealing with humans. We're used to dealing with them. And it's a more of a smoother relationship. You're going to find if you treat these beings as something to be scared of and to shoot and kill because you don't know what you think they're going to kill you. Well, you're just starting a bunch of crap. You don't need to be starting. I think, unless you're going to hurt them or their children. I don't have any reports of any of my people other than a couple of get away,
Yep.
growls and stuff, but nothing violent, nothing, and I don't consider going up and slapping your house with rocks or your hands or your fist as violent. That's just, I want food. Give me more of that human food,
Yep.
or quit hunting and killing our food, or quit hunting and killing our fish, or polluting the water, or quit dumping your garbage. I mean, there's reasons for them to act out, but they're not inflicting violence. Those stories, maybe back in the 1920s when, with the Ape Canyon and stuff like that, where they're attacking and all that, but that was isolated area again where they're not used to humans and they are considerably more powerful than we are. They can take us out in a heartbeat, so, but they didn't. They could have. Now, the fact that we had guns and rifles and we were shooting at them, left and right, that we kept them at bay, I guess. But I just, the way that any of the cryptids are dealt with, they're going to deal with us the same way. with rare exception, I'm going to be called on the carpet here and there, but with rare exception, it's us that are making the first negative, hateful move,
Yep.
not them, unless we happen to have walked upon their family hideout. I mean, literally, and even then they will get up and run or throw stuff at you to get you out of there. They will not try to harm, because that's just not, they're not about that, and I can't speak for all the cryptids. I can just speak for the Sasquatch, the ones that I see and or have spoken with and can share that, that's just not how we do things. We just don't do things that way.
Well, that's like this one on the Boggy Creek. According to Elizabeth Ford, the creature was initially thought was a bear, reached through the screen window that night while she was sleeping on the couch. It was chased away by her husband and his brother Don. During the alleged encounter, the Fords fired several gunshots at the creature and believed that they had hit it. Though there was no traces of blood were found, an extensive search of the area failed to locate the creature, but the three-toed footprints were found close to the house, as well as scratch marks on the porch and damage to the window and the house's siding. According to the Fords, they had heard something moving around outside late at night several nights prior, but having lived in the house for less than a week, had never encountered the creature before.
Hmm.
Which,
Uh, to answer Grandizer 12, the area where the dinosaur and human prints have been found are Glen Rose, Texas. They call it Dinosaur Valley State Park. And the Paluxy Riverbed. And that's where in limestone they either they were walking with them or they walked by the dinosaur footprints, used them as a direction to follow, so they would go find something that they were looking for,
Mhm.
or they were walking with them. No one's been able to, I don't think, uh, find a difference in the date. Like the strata was disturbed at about the same time, so they say. But yeah, that's really cool. See, East Texas is full of all kind of cryptid activity. And I'm from Texas. I'm from Dallas, Texas. So, but I was a little Boy Scout. I didn't know any of that stuff. I was, 10, 12 years old. I wouldn't know about that. Of course, the government denied it anyway. So that stuff doesn't exist, kid. You're dreaming. So, so yeah, East Texas, boy, I had it made. I lived in Dallas. It's just 2-hour drive, and I'm in a heck of an area. But I'm happy here in Missouri because we got the Mark Twain National Forest.
Oh
Great,
yeah,
good stuff going on down here. You've got some of my pictures.
yep.
So it's real stuff. But do we need cryptids for our sociological happiness? You know what I mean? Do we need spooky monsters as a society? Or these are really happening?
Right.
Because everyone says, well, that's just old lore. Well, that's Indian lore. Well, that's Native American lore. Well, that's, the pilgrims. I said, well, they were telling stories before hoaxing was real. When people saw stuff or heard stuff, they drew it on a cave or they told you about it.
Yep.
There's no hoaxing, back then. That was like, oh my God, this country is so new. I'm seeing all these things. And no one could say, well, we haven't explored the whole United States yet. There could be this, that, and the other out there. We don't know. So I just wonder, as a society, do we need that to tell scary stories to our kids to scare them? You better be good, or I'm going to feed you to the Mothman, or is it a real thing that we've relegated it to lore because we're told by the government and everybody else who matters that, well, if you think these things exist, you're crazy. We're the government. Trust us. None of this exists. UFOs don't exist either, do they? Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, I'll trust the government like I'll trust my ex-wife. So not at all, not one bit. No country for old men, brother. Yeah, that's it. That's about right.
Right.
Yeah, the hide behind thing. I hear that a lot more with people that are talking about the pale white, slender man,
Yep.
uh, calling you by name or just sounding like a child in distress in the middle of the night. Oh, help me, help me! You run toward it, and it's not a child in need. It's some type of cryptid or fairy or whatever else is out there.
Right.
So, but maybe we need that, because a lot of people will talk about, well, my parents used to scare us and tell us, I'm going to feed you to the Sasquatch, or I'm going to feed you to the hogs, or I'll feed you to the wolf. Now we got coyotes. I'll feed you to the coyotes. Do your homework, or you're done.
Yep.
So, I mean, we have as a race and as parents, family members used threats of fear or violence to get our kids to mind. I think the Native Americans talked about that. Well, you don't want to go out there, you won't come back. So we'll run you off. When you want to be a man, you got to go out and kill a bear or
Yep.
kill a lion or tiger. So probably wouldn't have had that kind of luck with the Sasquatch. But I just kind of wonder, story wise, do we, and that's where a lot of the government types will tell you that, well, that's where we get a lot of where these things are brought to life by the people fantasizing about these things. And, we need them to, make us feel better about ourselves as humans or whatever. Well, maybe this stuff's real, and, I know Sasquatch is real. I mean, I've seen and dealt with them. Heck, I've written 4 books on them. All my people. I mean, so back to the reporting and the craziness of all of these cryptids. Yeah, that's kind of old news with the Native Americans. And they're saying they used to come in, they would trade their women and children for food,
Mm.
supposedly. When the Native Americans, the Sasquatch, were trading every now and then. Uh, yeah, the monsters were the bones of prehistoric creatures that were on the surface or printed on rocks. Yeah, that's before, like I was saying earlier, that's before hoaxing.
Yep.
Me see this, me draw. I mean, that's all they knew. They weren't, civilized enough to realize, oh, I can jack with this. I can jack with Brutus, the caveman, and his led there in the other cave on the cul-de-sac. I'll jack with him and his wife. I'll draw this drawing on the wall and see if it scares him. No, they were drawing what they saw, what
Yep.
they heard. Native Americans, uh, all kinds of people. That when you saw something or heard something, you told everybody. You didn't try to keep it a secret. You didn't try to blow it up into something that wasn't. You just said, "I just saw a gray alien come out of a ball of fire that landed on my back 40 and walked out and took some of my chickens and went back on the spaceship."
Yep.
As preposterous as that sounds, that's probably exactly what happened. you know, and so do we need the lore? I bet we do. I bet we kind of need it because
Hmm.
it's part of who we are before we got civilized, as humans, use that term loosely, and before hoaxing became a thing and
Yep.
there's money tied to everything. Yeah, well, bring me a Sasquatch body, it's a $5 million bounty. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Thunderbird of Oklahoma. I've got a friend down there, Mike Parton. He's a Native American. He lives. I had one of his reports. I tried to get it published. They wouldn't publish it. Uh, but yeah, I think they see them a lot down in the Oklahoma,
Yep.
Texas area. There are a lot of them are the condors that are flying out there were spoken or kind of mistaken for the the prehistoric creature with the big beak and the big head. I can't remember what they're called, uh, but
Oh, the pterodactyls.
pterodactyl. Yeah, they're reported about once or twice a month down that area. You'll see that, and whether they're coming through a portal or they're coming out of the caves in the ground and just flying up and getting out and getting up.
Yep.
You know, people aren't nuts. They don't want that crazy label to put on them. They want you to know they're telling the truth. So, there are fakers and stuff like that. But people that are just, I did a show down in Joplin, and uh, I did a presentation, and these three women came up to me, and they had seen a Sasquatch on the highway, and they experienced missing time. They were scientists. That was a weird admission to come from a scientist. They had been, this was down in Joplin, and they were headed back to Oklahoma from, I think, somewhere further east,
Mhm.
uh, I don't know where they were coming from, but they stopped by this conference we were doing, and they had seen, and it was running alongside their car on the highway, and they started slowing down, and it stayed right with them, and so they sped up, got way ahead of it, and they never saw it again, but they noticed they had been driving for 3 hours, and the last thing they knew, it was 10 minutes is all had gone by. They lost 3 hours of missing time seeing the Sasquatch running along the highway that goes from where I was here in Missouri to Oklahoma.
Wow.
And so they're female. One was a scientist. One was an administrator for some science board, and they were going. I forget where they'd been to. It was a conference, I think, with just scientific process. It was just a kind of a meeting about doing things more scientifically, whatever wherever they worked. So they had never seen or even considered a Sasquatch, and they saw it. And I got several stories of missing time in my book with people seeing Sasquatch. I have a woman out of Canada who just messaged me this morning and is fairly concerned that she may have had some missing time and some abduction stuff. It's bizarre.
Oh yeah. Our next one is the Honey Island Swamp Monster,
Yep.
which is the Cajun Sasquatch from Louisiana. Ape-like humanoid creature similar to descriptions of Bigfoot, reported into inhabit the Honey Island Swamp in St. Tammany Parish, Louisiana, has become a part of the Louisiana folklore, with many swamp tour companies in the area capitalizing on its alleged existence, which is considered unlikely by scientists.
Yeah.
Creature is commonly described by alleged witnesses as large bipedal humanoid about 7 feet tall, covered with gray hair, having yellow or red eyes, and accompanied by a putrid odor. Other locals' names for the creature include the Louisiana Wookiee and the Thing. Alleged plaster casts of footprints said to be from the creature showcased 4 toes, not a natural trait found in primates who possess 5.
Hmm. And what do you say to that?
Yeah, and then it says claims of its existence are generally not considered credible, including by scientists familiar with the area like ecolog- ecologist Paul Wagner and his wife Sue. Neither they nor their Cajun guide Robbie Charbonnet report having seen any valid evidence beyond anecdotes and possible forgeries. And first claimed sighting was in 1963 by Harlan Ford, a retired air traffic controller who had taken up wildlife photography after his death in 1980. A Super 8 film showing the creature was among his belongings. In 74, and his friend Billy Mills claimed to have found unusual footprints in the area as well as the body of a wild boar whose throat had been gashed. Today, the creature is still purported to inhabit the swamp and the bayou along the Pearl River. Local lore tells that of a train crash that occurred near the swamp in the early 20th century, in which a traveling circus lost chimpanzees who adapted to the environment and offered a potential explanation as to the creature's origins.
That's such an old story. We've got a place here in Kansas City area called Monkey Mountain.
Mhm.
There's three Monkey Mountains, one down south, one here, and one up St. Joe. And all of those have a ridiculous excuse. Well, the circus train came through town, wrecked, and gorillas got away, and
Mhm.
chimps. And they went into the land and they started breeding and multiplying. And so that's where they came from. That's so ridiculous. I mean, show me a newspaper clipping that shows a circus train crashing here in the Kansas City area
Right.
and escaped gorillas climbed up on this mountain and they're living there now. You know, now I've had, and that's the thing with any cryptids or anything, even alien. You know, the government controls everything we see,
Mhm.
except what I can walk out and see in my backyard right now. But you know what I mean? If we don't say it exists, it doesn't. So you can be made to look like a fool real easy, real quick. It doesn't take much. If you just got a bunch of people that are sheeple, you know.
Right.
But just think, and I put this in all my books. We've been told since the day we were born till the first 22 years of your life, 18 if you don't go to college, you have been told what exists and what isn't. You've been told what cannot exist. If you see you're mistaken or someone's pulling your leg,
Right.
trust your government. We would never lie to you. Oh, bull crap. So you have to overcome 18 to 22 years of programming. You're just an innocent kid. You're going to school, you're going to high school, you're going to college, junior college, whatever you're doing. And you're told left and right, this doesn't exist. There's no such thing as life on other planets. There's no flying saucers. There's no aliens. There's no Sasquatch. There's no this, that, and the other. Oh, well, wait, we were lying. There are UFOs now.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I find zero fault with anybody who doesn't believe because we've all been groomed the same way. It is when you open your mind or you suddenly go, yeah, well, I'm not, I used to buy that, but now I don't. The government's full of crap, so you start questioning things and that's when you start digging. But look at all the holes we have to dig to get us out of the cave we're in, put here by the government and science, social media, education, colleges. Uh, think how much we have to undo to even get them to throw us a bone,
Yeah, exactly.
and the UAP, that's the bone they threw us. Well, technology is just getting to be such that we just can't ignore these things. Well, you're not ignoring them, you're lying about it. That's a completely different thing.
Yep.
Know all about it. You've got the ET technology, and we got traded down the river a long time ago with Eisenhower and Truman. You can take our humans, do what you want with them. Don't hurt them, don't kill them. We will let you take them and return, we want some technology. We want the Kevlar. We want the computer chip. We want all this other stuff, you know. So that's how that kind of worked out. So, and it's the same thing with the cryptids. Although I think the government knows there's so much more to them than a dumb ape or a dumb mothman or a
Right.
dog man or any of the other cryptids that Ruger, any of those that exist or claim to exist. You know, they've got a lot of lies they got to undo. And so it's better if they just spoon fed it. And there's going to be an accident. There's going to be some kind of revelation that shut us all up for a few months or a few years. That's what the UAP was for. You know, they say, well, yeah, they're not UFOs, they're UAPs. There are some things here. We don't know what they are. We did not make them. We don't have that capability. So we don't know what they are. But we're not going to say that they're this, that, and the other because we don't really know. Could be spook lights, could be whatever. Oh, come on, man. You know, serious. So my point was we have a whole lot of programming that's done from the day you're born to the day you can
Right.
vote. And many people are just happy with ignorance is bliss. Well, I don't believe them. I've never seen one. I probably never will. I don't even concern myself with it. And that's all well and good. If that's your lifestyle, that's good. You're happy not knowing that stuff. It has no interest to you, you know. But it may have some bearing on your life because they may be a part of us. We may be a part of them. We don't know. You
Right.
know, any of the cryptids, you know, not just Sasquatch, but anything. We just don't know, you know. And we can't see at night. What do we see? Very little of the actually light in human spectrum. We cannot see worth a darn. You know, every animal on the planet can see better than we do, especially at night. So, there's something walking right by you at night. You might not even know it, you know. And these beings live in the woods and the forests and maybe come from other dimensions. They're passing through portals, coming here, eating, mating, doing whatever they do, and then pass on to another place. They keep going and doing their thing. So, we don't know. It just sounds so far fetched that everyone's going, well, that's baloney. I know I ain't gonna believe that. But you just might have to because some of this stuff's gonna come out to be really real stuff.
Right. And I mean, like these, they resemble similar to the skunk ape. They've got the smell from the swamp, and they're 7 feet tall, like a skunk ape.
Yeah. And imagine if you weren't eating all the chemicals and all the poisons that the government and the food plants put into our food. We got to feed these people. There's way too many people for what we have, so let's just throw a bunch of garbage together and call it cereal or sandwich meat, and it's not really. And we'll feed them. So, but yeah, we're just all manipulated. So we just need to hold on to our beliefs and continue, believing and trying to expose and trying to get the videos. I mean, it's a great exercise in, the human, psyche is to keep digging and keep proving in the face of everybody and their mother
Hmm.
lying to you and calling you a fool or an idiot if you believe this stuff.
Right. Our next one, this is actually a familiar picture. You may know this one, Carter. It's been in YouTube videos.
Oh, that's my ex-wife with the Bologna, JK. Yeah, there's Patty.
And
There.
which is your regular North American Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm.
And the earliest written account was made in 1811 by David Thompson. And he was mapping the regions of Canada and the United States of America at the time. And he talked to the Spokanees, I believe, in the race of giants which inhabit a certain mountain off the west of us. And he spoke to them, a local Native American tribe in Washington State. According to Thompson, the Spokanenis told him of a race of hairy giants that lived on some of the nearby mountains, possibly Mount St. Helens or the Cascade Mountains, that would steal salmon and people while they were asleep. Similar to the Ostman story in 1924, this was also the first time a footprint was mentioned for a Bigfoot. Thompson said that the giants left footprints 1.5 feet long. And the Oatman account was in 1957. A man named Albert Ostman reported being stolen in his sleep by a Sasquatch, similar to stories of giants told by the Spokanans. He claimed that in 1924, while he was searching for gold, he felt that someone was carrying him while he was asleep. Ostman claimed that he woke up, he could see 8 feet tall Sasquatches with long arms, hairy bodies, except for the padded feet, which lacked hair. Ostman also stated that the Sasquatches appeared to live as a family like modern apes. This simulation is similar to modern accounts where baboons have reportedly stolen infants while they were sleeping. It is known why primates perform such behavior. However, it may be related to the Ostman account.
Yeah, Albert Osman, he got kidnapped in his sleeping bag. They threw him and his sleeping bag over their shoulder and carried him. I can't remember how far, but it was many, many miles. He knew where he was, but he just could not have gotten there. And he escaped by feeding them chewing tobacco. They choked on chewing tobacco.
Oh, wow.
And that's how he escaped, because they were, they thought it was food because that was, something in his pockets. And so they saw him eating little pieces of it. And they thought, So he offered them some, and they started gagging and choking. And that's when he broke and ran and got away. That's the story, the Albert Osman story. And they carried him forever, and he thought they were going to eat him. But when they got there was babies and moms and big ones, and they were just wanted to look at him. They just had him there. It was like just kidding him. I want to look at him. I want to see what he's like, what he does. Let's
Yep.
see what he eats. Let's see what he eats, what he does. Crazy story, but he signed an affidavit that anybody can lie, I guess, and anybody can write, but his story has been torn apart so many times that
Mhm.
it's probably legit. I mean, there's never going to be a way, but he signed a criminal affidavit. I don't know if it was like Peter Byrne or one of the other Sasquatch researchers at the time that was around. He's gone now. But somebody had gotten him to sign
Mhm.
an affidavit, and it got published in a newspaper. So yeah, to me, that's a credible story. I mean, it's so bizarre,
Yeah.
and the reason people don't make those stories now is because they don't want anybody to know who they are, where they're at. Albert Osman was just a prospector, and he was out camping by himself, and he got taken. And so he wanted to have some help and someone to tell a story to. And so he did, but it seems to have stood the test of time,
Yep.
and there was the other thing, the Ape Canyon,
Yeah.
where three or four different prospectors they had a cabin out in the woods somewhere, and it didn't have any windows. So the deer were coming up and eating all the berries. They had all these berries and blueberries and berry trees and bushes that were growing right around this cabin. And the Sasquatch were coming over there and eating it. Well, the guys didn't want them doing that. I can't remember what the crop was. It's either grapes or berries, but it was sort of
Mhm.
prolific in the area. And they started shooting at them because they don't want them eating all the berries. Well, they came down and was throwing logs and rocks and trying to break into the house. And there's no windows on this house, just a door. And so the siege at Ape Canyon's another story, you know.
Yeah, I actually have that story right here. In the summer of 1924, prospector Fred Beck and four others reportedly shared a nightmarish encounter with a tribe of ape men in Washington Mountain Range near Mount St. Helens. The
Hmm.
area is now known as Ape Canyon. The group had been prospecting for 6 years in the surrounding area and had found several large tracks, the largest measuring 19 inches by creek beds and springs, tracks not made by any animal known to these seasoned outdoor enthusiasts. Though apprehensive, they carried on, working on a gold claim in Ape Canyon. The prospectors shared a sturdy pine log cabin they had built. Every evening for about a week, the prospectors could hear strange sounds around them, like whistling or a thumping like something hitting its chest. One day, Fred accompanied his friend, given the Hank in his first-hand account, headed to get some water from a nearby spring. It was there that Hank spotted a hairy humanoid creature about 7 feet tall with blackish brown hair hiding behind a pine tree on the other side of the small canyon. Hank raised his rifle and fired, and even 100 yards away, Fred Beck claimed to see bark fly from the pine tree. The large animal disappeared down the canyon side. 3 bullets fired by Beck, flying close to it but missing their mark. The two brought water and their bizarre story to the rest of the group, who anonymously agreed to head home, but they would wait until the next morning to avoid being caught out in the canyon come nightfall.
What do you do with that? I mean, you know, it either happened or it didn't, and it just goes with other events. And it again, it's like these beings, Ape Canyon, Osman, we're up in their territory where they don't deal with humans too much.
Yep,
Well, they came down and grabbed one and wanted to see what we're like because maybe they're not sure about us either, like we're not sure about them. You know, and the Ape Canyon thing it is the same thing. You know, we are dealing with a being. You can't just, I guess you could just make that up, but what could it be if it wasn't that?
right.
You know, the granddads are, I like that question. The brightly lit, how do you interpret that with all the research you've done? Well, it's kind of like some people are in tune with things going on around them. I, by virtue of past experience, I see things, I hear things, I have conversations with the Sasquatch people on occasion. They come at night when I'm meditating and stuff. By far, Patterson Gimlin is the best documented. I wouldn't call encounter, but proof of existence. Also, this footprint back up here, uh, Paul Freeman, he's got some darn good footage. Paul Freeman from Washington State, he was a government forestry worker, and he had discovered Sasquatch tracks, structures, etc., seen them, and started following them and documenting things unbeknownst to the forestry service he was working for because he knew what their policy was. And his son has now continued his research. But that's a really great big print, great big dermal ridges on the toes and everything. It's a really good footprint. So, but I would go with Patterson Gimlin because it's got the most notoriety and it's just been beaten to death and studied to death. You know, up until recently, the breasts, it was not, it was just thought this was a male Sasquatch, but there are breasts on this being here. And depending on some people's view, it was carrying a child, or the child was hanging onto it away from the camera on the side. You cannot see right behind it. There supposedly was a theory that it was carrying a baby or an infant.
Hmm.
So of course we don't know about that.
Yeah, the rest of that story, it said when nightfall came in the canyon with the five prospectors sound asleep, their sleep would last until midnight when the tremendous thud against the cabin wall startled them awake. Hank was on the floor covered in a chinking knocked loose from the wall. Squinting through the space left by the chinking, he saw three ape-like creatures like the one they had encountered by the creek. These creatures, called mountain devils by Hank, hurled rocks at the cabin and attempted to break through the door, which was braced with a pole scavenged from a bunk bed. A notable event occurred when one hairy arm reached through the gap left by the chinking and grabbed an axe by its handle, though it was unable to get it out. Every prospector was armed, however. Fred and Hank were the only two who fired. The rest gripped their rifles in the corner. The two would stop shooting when the creatures would quiet down, hoping they would understand that, should they desire, they could leave peacefully. And if you leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, Hank said, and we'll go home in the morning. The attack lasted until sunrise, and as soon as the prospectors were sure it was bright enough to see, they eased out of their ravaged cabin. Not long after, Fred noticed one of the mountain devils on the edge of Ape Canyon, about 80 yards away. He fired his rifle, and this time he didn't miss. The animal collapsed and tumbled down the gorge 400 feet below. Fearing there was no better time to escape, he group retreated from Ape Canyon, bringing what little they could fit in their packs. And it's better to lose them, Hank said, than our lives. Fred, a claimed clairvoyant, believes the creatures of supernatural origin and because of this body will never turn up. Similarly, the body that supposedly fell 400 feet down the gorge was never found. The cabin built by the prospectors, according to Beck, burned to the ground many years later.
There was supposedly a story, and it's all a story, that someone did find that body and they put it on a train and it disappeared. That they people in the area saw that they had found it and they put it on a train and it kept going. The train stopped, they got it, and they kept going. Unsubstantiated. Heard it a few times, but I think it's just it gets wings when people retell the story. You know, no, everybody wants to think that the greatest thing of all time happened, that they found the body and took it somewhere. You know, did it become the Minnesota Iceman? Who knows? Rather doubt it. But you know, there's stories. Uh, but back to this question, which I like this question. Uh, Knowing and believing are two different things. So even if you let your mind run crazy with, you know, fanciful thoughts of ghosts and goblins and Sasquatch and aliens and all this stuff, you know, if you don't really believe, but it kind of titillates you and you like the thought of it, but you're not sure you'd really want to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. I think that's kind of the thing that people, they get excited and they go, "Oh, that would be kind of cool to see one," and then it never happens. It's not something they follow up on or attempt to do. But I think there's something sexy and mysterious about the possibility of something that can get you, kill you, take you, mystical, paranormal or otherwise unproven, but believed in general. I think that's sort of an exciting way for some people to live, voyeurs. They aren't going to go out and do the research. They'd love to believe it's real. Not sure they would ever want to be in a position to prove they're real, But, talking about his question about that, the reality versus the unseen, the underworld. I
Mhm.
just think, until you have, and I had zero concept of Sasquatch. When I started my research, I was brought into this by the ape only crowd. They don't believe they're anything other than a dumb ape we just can't find. It's running amok in the North American woods.
Right.
So I was brought up with, and I didn't know any better. I had fanciful ideas. And, at the time I'd had other things that happened to me that would make me realize there are other things in the world, the universe, a whole nother story. But, if you have the thought process that this is all possible, but I don't know if I'd ever really want to deal with it, but it's kind of exciting to think that it might be, and maybe I'd be really excited to see something once. I'm not
Right.
sure you can handle it, because you're told that these are all bad. They don't exist, but if they do exist, they're bad. They're going to kill you and eat your babies, So that's what we're told about everything, aliens and Sasquatch and, Gowrows and Rougarous and all that. They're horrible things that'll take your life if you just don't be good, you know.
Right. And we're gonna talk about some of your evidence here.
No, that's a favorite. Okay. Oh, this is now you hear the stories about Sasquatch. Who'd be stupid enough to walk in front of a trail cam?
Right.
This one was. And what you can't see there is uh, my landowner was out checking his cameras one day, and this is him walking, and you see the shadow behind him on the ground. You see that long horizontal tree that fell a long time ago. It's on the ground. You see all that. What you can't see because of the camera that we're on, when he trips that camera, it is 3:15 and 36 seconds. 4 seconds later, that Sasquatch is tripping the same camera, same location. He didn't see it, hear it, sense it. It just appeared. If you look at the ground under that hand photo, you'll see the shadowing, which is not quite as solid as it is here where he's walking, because he bumped that. There you go. There we go. He bumped that camera when it appeared, and it knocked the camera, so you don't have the solid line, the exposure to the sun, and you see the tree. You see the trees at the background of the hand.
Mhm.
It looks like they're blowing. There's no wind that day. That's the other proof that it bumped the camera and put everything out of focus.
Wow.
We theorized that being just materialized out of nowhere, and it didn't know where it was, wasn't paying attention, and it hit the camera when it became physical. 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how long he had between the time he tripped the camera and this being that was right behind him. You'd have seen it. You'd have smelled it. You'd have done. If it was physically there, he would have seen it. I can't prove it, but there's no other explanation. But that is just an incredible. Kathy Taylor, I probably remember you if I saw you, Joplin. Yeah, the videos are creepy, strange, you know, and it. I got accused by so many people. That's fake. What are you doing putting that fake stuff out there? That's fake. That couldn't happen that way. There's no way, you know. Well, they all shut up after a while because they couldn't dispute
Right.
it, you know. The fingers look a little weird, but I've done the Google lens. I did everything I could before I'm gonna put my name on something. I looked and looked. There is not anything that looks like that on Google Lens. You know, it shows gorilla hands and monkeys and chimps and all that stuff. The fingertips look a little odd, but that could just be because it's a juvenile. Maybe it's not even a Sasquatch. It could be another being entirely.
Yeah. It could be something else.
That is the area that I told you we were filming. They saw that picture and I said, I've got a picture I want to send you. And I want you to let me know if it's fake or not before you come. And they called about 2 hours later. They got it to their film production people. I said, that's not fake. I don't know what it is, but it ain't fake. It hasn't been manipulated in any way, shape, or form. And the gentleman in that picture is the town preacher. And that's the other thing I got backlash on. Well, you know, preachers lie too. Look at that Joel Osteen guy down in Texas.
Right.
That guy's just a sleazeball stealing money left and right and enriching himself. And, you know, so preachers are just regular people. But if you dissect the film, the video, and 4 seconds behind him, I mean, good grief. How does that happen if it's not really happening? You know,
Yeah, exactly.
it's not faked, and you can see the shadow, and it did bump the camera because we're seeing different things in the hand photo than we are in the preacher doing his walk around on his land. And so that is, you know, it's just a great. Oh, he said calling all heathens. Oh no, that Mr. Heathen. I didn't want to insult him. He's got great hair. But so it's just video like that. Now, can you pull that other one up that's got the face on that screen on the? Yeah. Look at this, everybody. Now, this is another one of my habituation people, and they have a big greenhouse operation where they're selling, they're growing and selling a lot of food to the farmers markets and stuff. And they had a lot of food disappearing from their greenhouses, and the greenhouses look like this. They're kind of like the Quonset huts. I'll get a picture up here. Where to go? Oh, it's back here. Yeah. Anyway, they have these green greenhouses that they're plastic, and so that face, they're stealing food out of and they knew that food was disappearing, so they kept trying to figure out. They knew there were Sasquatch in there. They've been there, and they assumed it was them, but they never saw them. But they saw them around all the time. And so, what a galactic family? What this this is a Sasquatch juvenile putting his face up against the plastic. He's trapped inside the greenhouse. He's about to get busted. And the kid, about 25 years old, who kind of runs the operation for the whole family, he ran. He got an alarm that the lights were going on. That means there's somebody over there at the greenhouses, and so he hauled ass out of his house. He was headed there. He heard all this incredible screaming going on the right side of the growing area. As he got about halfway closer, he heard all this screaming going on in the woods to the left of the growing area. When he got to the greenhouse and let himself in, that Sasquatch ran right by him and brushed up against him. They could have kissed. And they've seen them many, many times. And so the face print you're seeing is from the propane heaters that are heating the greenhouses with propane heat. They just got pipes running. They got the heater in between two Quonset huts, and they run pipes in each one, and it puts condensation in there, keeps everything warm so the vegetables don't freeze and crap out during the winter. So that's what they do. And there's another picture there where they just stand there and press their head and put their hands up on the plastic to brace themselves. There's a picture of that too. Well, look at that picture. You got the eyes. You got if you blow it up, you can see the hair, the grains of hair, the strands of hair coming out of the forehead, going back into that head. You can see his lips. You can see his nostrils. I mean, it's a negative picture of a Sasquatch juvenile. And there's a handprint up there to the left of the door where they're standing up like this going, okay, where's the stupid humans? Where are they at? And that's what he's doing. He's, yeah, right there. Look at that. And the other picture you may have, that handprint is, yeah, that is his hand, the kid who runs the operation. That is about 4 to 5 inches taller. That was about 11 and a half or 12-inch handprint on the creature. Look at the hair on those fingers. I mean, it's all distorted, but this is what happens to my habituation folks. This happens a lot. The people that are living with these beings on their property, they see them or interact or otherwise are aware of their presence so often that they will forget to tell me things. I'll call them up. Hey, Henry, I hadn't talked to you in a while. What's been going on? And well, we got a new car. Jenny went and got her haircut the other day down at the salon and went to Walmart. And one of our Sasquatch showed me their babies about a month ago. Did I tell you that? Just out of nowhere. Because it's such a root, like you get up, you brush your teeth, you have breakfast, you go to the bathroom, you go get oil change. They have a little bit different life than
Right.
Sasquatches living on their property, and they see them and they deal with them, And so it's hard to believe and grasp. I have communicated telepathically with the Sasquatch people. In fact, last night we meditate. My wife and I don't sleep real well, so we meditate to get in the groove, get the cosmic groove going, and just become one with the universe and be able to still your active mind. It's just going like this at 11 o'clock at night. You can't go to sleep.
Yeah.
So we meditate, and on occasion they do come to me and they show me where they live. And that started in 2019 when I led this expedition in Illinois.
I've actually got that one too.
Yeah. You see those 5 rocks on the left.
Yep.
There was only 4 people on that expedition. They didn't want to cancel because COVID had just started. So the guy who was going to do this expedition, this was in Illinois. And so he canceled. He said, I can't do it. I got family and kids. I can't do it. And everybody else canceled. But these 4 people said, we want to go. We've given our money. We don't want a refund. Somebody will take us somewhere. So the lady who does all the bookings for the expeditions on BFRO called me and said, hey, do you want to lead an expedition? We got 4 people that are diehards. They want to go. So I said, yeah, I'll do it. So those 5 rocks on the left, that's me, the pointed rock, the leader, leading the 4 people that were on the expedition. At the other end of the rock, there's a short round rock. That was my partner, Harold, who lives in Illinois. And when I go there, he and I get together because he knows the areas. And so, but he's had strokes and cancer. So he stayed in his truck in the parking lot of this area we picked. And so he stayed there. So that rock is Harold, who was there, but he really wasn't there because he could not navigate this terrible terrain we had. It was a really rocky, cliffy trail. Anyhow, we were done. We had a lot of footprints. We had a lot of, activity, but they would not communicate with us. So I told Harold, I said, well, I'm going to go leave a camera here because if I don't get any pictures, well, I'm used to that. Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, you don't get anything. But if I don't leave a camera, I'm never going to get a picture. So I left a camera there. That was a Saturday night. And I got up the next morning and I was headed back to Kansas City. And I went back to get my camera. Sometimes I get choked up when I tell this story because it was like one of my best aha moments. I feel it coming right now. I'll try not to. I went to get my camera, which was at the other end of the log here. This log was blocking a big part of where we walked, so it was a good stopping spot. I looked at that and I'm going, what? There was nobody here last night. How did anybody, where did these come from? I called Harold and said, hey, Harold, what's the deal? Do you know anything about these rocks? And he had no idea. I said, there's 5 rocks here. And it looks like it's me and the 4 people. That's how I'm interpreting it. And there's one of you, which is a short round rock, and you're kind of short and round, and you're at the other end of the thing because you were there but weren't there. Here's the good part. I called my wife to tell her I was on the way. It's 315 miles away in Kansas City. This was in, when I tell you where this was, it was the Trail of Tears.
Okay.
Oh, baby. I picked it, but I was not aware of what really happened at that particular spot. Well, let me finish this. So I called my wife. I said, hey, you're not going to believe this, but I went through the whole thing. I said, there's rocks left here. We were gifted rocks. We were here. There's nobody out. It's COVID. Nobody's out. It got dark at 5 o'clock. Nobody's out in this area anyway. It's COVID and it's a forbidden area. So she goes, well, what time? I said, I don't know winter time. We were back at the camp by 5:30 or 6 because it gets dark. It was October, and so she said, well, I was getting ready for bed last night. About 8:30, a blue orb comes into our bedroom, flies around 2-3 times, flies into the bathroom, and disappears. They were letting me know they knew who I was and they knew where I lived. That's all that could be, was that. And I'm getting teary-eyed now because it's such a monumental, and this is when they started making contact with me mentally, psychically, Now, this place, the Trail of Tears, this is where 4 or 5 years before this, I can't remember, a big flood came through, and there's a plaque that sits there and tells you that 95, 94 Native Americans froze to death. They died in this very
Mm.
spot we were at because they were waiting to get to the Mississippi River, which is just a mile or two up the road from this where this picture is. And they froze to death. And they had a bunch of people, waiting them. They were meeting sympathetic other Native Americans or other, white people that were, sympathetic to the way we were treating them. Stole their land and killing them and all that. So, but those people that died and froze to death there, they were buried there. A big flood came through and washed a lot of the graves away. And so when I go to a little town and I ask, I'm going to the mom and pop restaurants at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's when you talk to the overall crowd. You talk to the guys that know where this, that. So I'd say, well, where's a good place to go do some Sasquatch research? We believe in Sasquatch. We just want to go. Well, I tell you where you don't want to go. You don't want to go to this place over here. Well, that's where I'm going.
Yep.
Because you told me that, well, what do you not want me to see? And
Right.
so that's where I went, and on the way there, I got a call from a guy who said there's a guy that lives very close to the water plant out there, which is where I was headed, who had a Sasquatch event. Long story short, it turned out to be a dog man event. And it freaked his daughter out so bad she moved away and never came back. And they're deeply, deeply religious. So, but that's why I picked that spot, because the Native American presence, if nothing else, I wasn't,
Yeah. Right.
because they believe, and that's probably a spiritually valid place for me to be, to look for them in that mindset, spiritual, and talking to them. And that's exactly what happened. It was just bizarre. And I went back the next 2 years. I left a gifting area there. We went back with a couple of buddies here, and I went and met Harold and another friend of mine up in Illinois, and we left a gifting area. Sasquatch Island in Canada. Yeah, that's in British Columbia, correct? I believe that's right. Yeah, I've got a guy who lives up there, and they eat, sleep, and drink the Sasquatch. So, but it's just, I didn't not believe this was possible, but I was being brought along by the ape-only crowd. But I'd had other things that had happened in my life that made me know spiritually that there's something going on, and we're just not privy to it yet. Well, I broke through with that book and those logs. I mean, that would just, and I get teary eyed every time because I'm so grateful for it. And last night, I had them, I get the same vision. They're showing me where they live. They're showing me their kids, their children. They're poking holes in the ground and digging up grubs and moles, and mice to eat and stuff. And, they show that to me. And
Right.
I'll ask, where is this? Because it looks like my research area here in Missouri. And they just say, home. This is home. They don't have any need to elaborate any more than that. I mean, this is where we live. What do you mean, where is it?
Right.
We live on the land. We live on the planet. What do you mean, where? What is Kansas City? What is Ellington, Missouri? What is, Ohio? What are they? You have names for these things. We don't do that. This is our land. This is where we live. This is our home. But that's all I get from them. And it's like, well, you don't need to know you live on Highway 44, 17 miles from a quick trip. You don't need to know that because you don't care. You're a spiritual being. That's the last thing you want to know. That you're, yeah, exactly. You don't need complex statements to say anything because, they live differently. They have different mindset. And it's so incredible that I've had this stuff just fall into my lap, and I didn't, you know, uh, I was abducted as a kid at 8 and by ETs, not by bad men. And I have known since then that very shortly after that, I saw In Search Of with Leonard Nimoy. Oh, those are real. I believe they're real. I want to see that. I want to do that. I remember, I was probably a teenager. I can't remember when In Search Of came out. It's 1970s, somewhere mid 70s. Is that about right?
Yeah, something like that, I believe.
Yeah. But I I had been abducted by then at the age of 7 or 8. This is the first time I remember it. It's probably happened. But anyway, my point is, I was already aware. I was already a believer, and I didn't even know I was believing anything. I just said, "Well, that makes sense." It's like when I saw all the stuff that Sasquatch doesn't exist, Mothman doesn't exist.
Yep.
None of that exists. Well, I already knew that they did. I don't know how. I mean, I guess I knew it because I was shown things when I was taken, and so I had a knowing, but I wasn't even smart enough to know I had a knowing. I mean, who would know that when you're 8 or 9 years old?
Right.
I believe I'm going to research Sasquatch when I grow up. I don't know that. I mean, I'm experiencing things, but it's because I was taken and shown things by the ETs, which is a whole other show. But I think they give certain people shoulder taps, and you're picked for something. Like you're picked to do your research in the
Yep.
paranormal and ghosts, and you're on the top of your game. You're supposed to be doing that. I'm supposed to be doing this. Of course, I had to work for a living and pay bills. Like, I was a real estate agent for 26 years. That's not real sexy, but it's what I did to pay the rent. And so, but it gave me knowledge that I already had. It just kind of told me, and the thing that's, frustrating, I think somebody just said something. I was abducted by ETs at 16. Maybe they abduct people who have a bigger psychic ability and you get the Sasquatch mind talk. You never know.
Yeah.
You don't know, there was reasons I was taken, but it was because of the hybridization. They were taking me they made babies out of me and my friend. And so, but I had a knowing, but I didn't know I had a knowing. At that age, 8 or 9, you don't know what you know and what you don't know. I didn't know any of this until I was 53. So 24 years ago. I'm 73 now. I'll be 74 in September. So 20 some odd years ago, I didn't find out any of this until 20 years ago when I was regressed. Accidentally, I found out. I had no idea. So all my life, I've been doing all this weird stuff, and it didn't occur to me that it was weird. It just occurred to me that, well, this is my path. This is what I do. Oh, you had some mantis hybrid beings. Oh boy. Yeah, I saw the reptilians. That's about the creepiest I got was the reptilians. But so to sum all that up, it's just that some of us are chosen or placed in situations where we will make. No, I'm not familiar with Geraldine Orozco. But yeah, there's one woman I know who's probably been taken many, many times. If I mention her name, you know her. There's a lot of researchers that when I put that abducted book out, they were going, "Oh my God, I had these dreams," and several of them have gone on to get hypnotized, and yeah, they had been abducted, floated out their window, out of their bed at night, impregnated. Came back, got the baby out of them 4 months later, and they were showing the baby later in their life. So this is your daughter. This is your son. Then they never see him again. But I just seem to know and understand all of this. None of it was weird to me. I just wasn't, I wasn't even capable of thinking like, why isn't anybody else doing this? It was just like,
Right.
that's what I was going to do one day. Yeah, that was it. I mean, it was, and I was a rock drummer for 20 years. I sold real estate for 26 years. So I mean, wasn't like a deadbeat or anything. I was, making a living and doing stuff. But the ET stuff, it sat dormant for in my head. I've been regressed 8 times. The last was February of this year. And each time it validated what I had found out in the regression before, and then it told me new stuff. So it kept multiplying. It kept going, oh my God, all the things I've done and been exposed to, and it's like I expected it or something. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, that's what's going to happen. It just all this, did you ever wake up one day and go, I'm going to chase ghosts?
Nope.
Yeah. Well, I didn't either. Yeah. But it just turned out that in certain events had to happen to coagulate and create something else. And so that's just that's why I'm standing here right now, because I was doing these things that just seemed normal and natural to me, and I didn't think anything about it. Uh, I got regressed, and I was in 2004 when I was first regressed. I was describing being in underneath Machu Picchu, walking down these stairs that were moss covered, and I could hear water dripping. There was seaweed on the ground, on the floor, like you were walking, that long, tall seaweed that's got the little nodules on it. You see it a lot, that was walking on that. Yeah, but I was underneath Machu Picchu, and I had to walk by where they were taking me. I had to put my hand on this big stone, and before I could go around the curve, and it was, you would be physically, no, mentally stimulated and blessed with certain knowledge or powers or skills so you could walk and go on. This is under Machu Picchu. Well, they have since, in 2014, I think they discovered there were ruins under Machu Picchu. I was there and I saw them 10 years before anybody. It was rumored, but somebody discovered them for real in 2012, 2014. It was rumored for a long time, just like the Egypt stuff, but somebody actually discovered it. I was already talking about it 10 years before it was made public as an official thing. So, and I just found that out this last regression I did in February. And I suddenly realized I was watching this show on Machu Picchu. And I says, well, this area under here was thought to be in existence for hundreds of years, but no one ever found it. No one really looked. They just thought it was there, and we never got around to it. And all of a sudden we did discover it, and it is there. And I'd already been there 10 years before. Little things like that tell you you're on the right track, and that really happened, and whenever anybody who's listening to this, and we've been talking about all kinds of things, all the cryptids, and the UFOs and everything, don't be ashamed to believe it. Don't be ashamed to tell somebody, let your mind go where it's gonna go.
Yep.
No one has to know you're weird except you, or maybe your wife or your spouse. You know what I mean? My wife, now I know she's weird. She knows I'm weird. That's why we're married. But so if you have a feeling, you got an itch, scratch it. God dang it, scratch it. I've been scratching the heck out of mine for 20 years. I don't regret any of it. It's and you've got some great questions from these people. Really good questions. That's really really cool. They're oh, I'm a section state director with MUFON. I studied to be a MUFON investigator, and the guy told me, "You don't want to do this. They're stealing our data, and they're telling us to, if we find something that they like, you drop it, you leave it alone. We're taking over." And my guy said, "You don't want to do this." I'm getting very frustrated because I was assigned a mentor when I still got my book I got from MUFON for a study, you know. And he said, "You're going to be very, very, very disappointed because they're cutting our legs off every time we turn around." And I said, "Well, that's good to know because that's kind of what's happening with, you know, the Sasquatch people I deal with.
Hmm.
BFRO and others, they don't, if it's not ape and a dumb ape and nothing but, you don't even get the time of day. Well, I'm so past that now. We all are. I mean, that dumb ape theory is just, it's sad, but uh, unfortunate. They were, but we've been implementing safeguards. I guess that's talking about the,
Yeah, move on.
yeah, yeah. I know a couple of guys that are in that. I'm not going to mention their names because I don't want to drag them through the mud, but, they're not happy either. But it's all they got. And it's just like with me, you've got connections to certain data that most people aren't ever going to see.
Right.
Even if it's just a snippet of what it really is, you're more likely to see it than anybody else. So I guess you have to be thankful for that.
Yep.
But I took my stuff in my own hands because I have to go. And the BFRO is very, although I think they're thawing out. There's no, they would remove paranormal data, quantum data out of my reports, and then publish them anyway.
Right.
How stupid is that? I mean, come on, really? I mean, it's just, it's like you go rob a bank, in a stolen car, then you drive that car to Quick Trip, then you drive it to the license bureau to try to get a license plate, and you're going, what a dummy. What are you doing? I mean, why are you doing stuff that's so obvious, and then you're still selling it to the public? So, that's not fair, but that's just the government wanting to keep the secrets for themselves,
Right.
cryptids.
And they say that cryptids are part of the paranormal field anyways. A lot of them are paranormal.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is true. Yeah. And, I'm communicating with these people. I'm not nuts. I'm not crazy. I'm not dropping acid or anything. This is real stuff. It's just real stuff, and uh, my wife was with me when we discovered I had been abducted. I found out by accident. Yeah, Galactic, send me some stuff. You can get my data here. I'd like to chat with you. But my wife has been with me when I was regressed, and I started blurting out. I had no idea. We went to go get regressed with another couple for past lives to see if we had past lives. So when it came to be my turn, I start talking like 8-year-old Carter, crying, "Get your hands off of me. What are you doing to my friend? You're killing me. You're going to hurt me." She was with me when I discovered I had been abducted. So she can't go, "I don't believe that."
Right.
She was there. I took her to my research area in Missouri, Ellington, Missouri. She experienced me getting jacked with by the Sasquatch. They were making me see things that were not there. And I was describing them. And she's looking at me, go, "What are you talking about? What are you looking at? Don't you see it?" But she was there. The first person who would ridicule you is your spouse.
Right.
Good natured little kid in there, honey. But she can't because she's seen all of it. and experienced it for herself. That's the other validity that a lot of people can't get. You know, some people would see this stuff and go, I still don't believe it. Well, she's a smart person, so she realizes I'm seeing something that I may not believe it, but it's real. I'm looking right at it. So oh my God, you know. So you know, but it's been a fun ride because she's been there, and I don't have to worry about my spouse
Right.
ridiculing me. Now she's not read any of my books. It's another fight. Well, she her excuse is I kind of gave her a little gift on this one. I'm right. We share the office here. So she's been seeing me going through all my reports, all my pictures, all the videos, all the crap I got. She's going, oh my God, that may not be my cup of tea, but I see what's in there. I can't argue with it. But so in her mind, she's already seen the books and read them because she's seen all the photos and all the stuff. I'm showing her stuff. She's going, like that face on the plastic. I mean, how do you get that? That's just people. That's just me communicating with people and then communicating with me and me trusting and them trusting me and back and forth. And that's how you end up with that stuff. If you just can't find it on your own, you do find it because you're supposed to find it.
Yep.
I mean, that's a old hippy dippy way of looking at things, but I think that's why I'm getting the stuff because I'm going after it, and the people trust me and believe me. And I've had all these other bizarre things that I had no idea about until 2004. I've been regressed by Dolores Cannon twice. I mean, she's like the cream of the crop. I don't know if you know who she is. She's John Mack and Bud Hopkins combined. She's just got it, and she talks to anyway. So it's just a weird. So anybody watching this tonight, if you see or hear weird things, you go, that's just crazy. I can't say that. Bull crap. Say it. Maybe not to your boss when you're asking for a raise, but but embrace it.
Yeah.
Look into it. It can be your little secret. You don't have to believe this stuff, but just consider it because it's real stuff. It's easy for me and Russell to sit here and tell you this is real, but it is real, and you just have to stick with it if you've got a belief. That something will tap you on the shoulder and go, no, over here, look over here. Oh my God, it's real. Something will happen. It just always does, So anyhow, are we close to done or?
Yeah, we're just about done.
Okay. I didn't want to be yakking. That's all I do is yak anyway. Sorry about that.
And
So
I'll
yeah.
put your books up here, so if anybody's interested in buying your books.
Oh yeah. And by the way, these are all full color. I've written the fourth one that you probably haven't seen yet because I just released that last year. It's Habituations. I like the picture. But they're all full color. They're all real people. They're real story. There's no made up stuff in here at all. There's no, baloney, or anything like that. There's no made up stuff in any of my books. It's all real stuff, real people. They're full color, and the names and locations are changed, but otherwise the stories are real as the people that are telling them to me. Galactic family. No, I don't take any people out. I had a couple of bad experiences with that. So, I mean, no offense to you or anybody, but I don't do that anymore. It got really weird. Some guys got weird, and I'm not going to do that again. But so you can reach me at sqexplorer@gmail.com or sqexplorer.com, which is my webpage. Googly, I have never experienced that. I wouldn't be scared about it. Maybe we'll do another show.
Yeah, we'll do another one on it.
Yeah. But anyway, I've had a blast. This is really cool. Your audience is asking really good questions.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of I'm not going to say surprising, but it's, for the most part, a lot of the times, the questions I get are, what have you been smoking? You know, that. Well, no, not as much as you have apparently, because you haven't been listening. Because I've been telling you
Right.
some good stuff here, and you're too busy getting high. So anyway, but I've been doing this 20 years. I eat, sleep, and drink it. It's just awesome stuff. I have people, telling me all their secrets, all their things they wouldn't tell anybody. And yeah, thanks, Grandizer 12. Appreciate the niceness.
Thanks for tuning in, Granddad.
Yeah, but y'all can reach me if just send me an email. We'll chat. I don't just blow things off. I love talking to people and finding out things that are going on with you. You may or may not end up in a book. If you don't want to be in a book, don't call me. No, I'm just kidding. But if it fits, I just I've read 5 books in 4 years. I don't think I have any more in me. I think I'm done. But I might. I don't know.
I've got my first one getting ready to come out, and I'm almost done with it.
Well, I'll buy one. Just let me know what's coming out.
Yep.
So, but I had a great time, guys.
All right. And I thank you for coming on, being an excellent co-host with me.
It was a blast. Like I said, it's far easier when the people are tuned in to
Yep.
you and are listening. What I mean by tuned in, and they're asking intelligent questions. That's how you know you're hitting the right tracks. That's cool.
So again, remember to check out Carter's books, and if you want to learn more about Sasquatches and what he does, check out his books and all the reports that he's got. And before we close the show out, I got to plug an event for my good buddy Byron Cherry, who's an actor from the Dukes of Hazzard. Man played Coy Duke on the Dukes of Hazzard TV show. He's going to be in Somerset, Kentucky, June 28th, and they're going to be launching the General Lee. A guy is over 80 feet, and he's going to be about 200 to 300 feet in the air. And he asked me to promote the event. And all the Dukes of Hazzard cast is going to be there from the TV show, and he's also giving away these pictures autographed of Coy Duke. And you'll
Well, I already don't like him. He's got really beautiful hair. I'm jealous. I got more hair on my back than I have on my head, so that's really a sad testimony to where I'm at right now.
you'll
Yeah.
be seeing him with us at some events. He's going to come out and actually go on a paranormal investigation.
Oh, cool. Yeah, have you been posting that ad? Because I've seen that.
Yep, I've been
Yeah,
posting
I've seen
a
it.
lot of
I've
stuff
seen it.
for him, and
Yeah, no, that looks like it's fun.
no, I won't be there. I will be at Crypticon that weekend in Kansas City, a big horror movie convention.
Oh yeah, I'm doing something con. I think it's in Leavenworth. It's some kind of paranormal conference in Leavenworth
I'm
in
doing
July.
I'm doing one in September, Bordertown Paracon in September
Yeah.
down in Caney, Kansas.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've cut mine way back this year just because I wanted to go visit my habituation people, you know. So, but let's do this again whenever you're in the mood.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you want, we could do my abduction. That's pretty
Yeah,
bizarre.
yeah,
That's not really paranormal, but it's pretty interesting. It's
yeah.
just
I'm interested in the UFO stuff too, as well. So
yeah, it's just another reason that you're doing what you're doing is because that's second nature to you. The ghosts, ETs,
yep.
cryptids, they're all in that you know area you're not supposed to go near. And that's why it's so tempting.
And then with she being related to the owners of the Annabelle doll.
Yeah,
All
that you got that going too.
that. So,
Jeez.
so if you want to hang backstage for a minute, I'm going to close the show out, and I'll be with you in 1 minute.
Okay, all right,
See you in a minute.
all right.
Thank you guys for joining me tonight. Hope you found this show informational. Carter's an awesome friend, good guest. When it comes to the Bigfoot researching, that's why I brought him on, because we talked about the Rougarou, the Honey Island Swamp Monster, the Boggy Creek Monster, and then the regular Sasquatch. So thank you for joining me. There won't be a show tomorrow night. Like I said, we will be at the Missouri State Penitentiary at the Get Haunted event book signing. There is still tickets available at extremeticketing.com. So if you want to get your last minute tickets, come out, investigate with myself and the whole Get Haunted crew. They put on an awesome event. Get Haunted does. This will be my second event there with them, and we had a good time the first time. So be sure to come on out. Check us out. Book signing starts at 5:30. Investigation starts at 7:30 till 3 a.m. So hope to see you all there, and stay safe. God bless. Have a good night. And remember, if you're being bullied, you do have a voice. If you need to reach out to somebody, feel free to reach out to us. We will listen to you. Enough is enough with the bullying in the paranormal field. So feel free to reach out to us, and have a good night. Stay safe. God bless. And we will see you again next week. We're